Hello, chemists. Welcome back to our Chapter 2 lecture series. Michele Glass here, and our topic for this presentation is the ionic bond. So we left off in our last video talking about how to determine the chemical behavior of an atom. And what you do is you look at that valence shell or that outermost electron shell. Remember, if your atom has unpaired valence electrons, then we would consider it reactive, meaning it can enter into chemical bond. And that could be an ionic bond, which is the topic for this presentation, or that could be a covalent bond, which we'll talk about in the next video. When we talk about an ionic bond, it's important for us to define what we mean by ions. So ions are going to be charged atoms. So what we drew in our first video when we talked about our different atom structure is we talked about uncharged atoms. So now we're going to be drawing ions. So ions can be either cations or they can be anions. A cation is going to have a positive charge. The only way to become positively charged is to lose an electron. If you want to, you can think about your plus sign here, the T as a plus sign. We can make it a little plus sign. An anion is going to have a negative charge, which means it's going to gain electrons. And so what we're seeing is in the formation of ions, you're going to see an atom will lose an electron or gain an electron. Remember, that is going to be the only subatomic particle that would be involved here. You can't gain or lose protons because that actually defines that particular element. When we talk about an ionic bond, we can use the memory device transfer electrons, because what we see happening is one atom in the bond is going to gain electrons and the other atom in the bond will lose electrons. And then the key thing that we see happening here is that opposite charges attract. And so we're going to see that the anion and the negative, the cation and the negative anion, they are in love, right? So they are attracted to each other. So this is going to be a key feature of the ionic bond. To help yourself remember that your cation is losing electron. Here's this little comic strip from Frank and Ernest to help you with that. Okay, so let's go ahead and use sodium and chlorine as our examples. We've drawn out sodium before. It has atomic number of 11, and so we're going to do 11 protons in the nucleus, 11 neutrons, and then we're going to draw 11 electrons orbiting. Remember, 2 electrons go in the first shell, 8 go in the second, and then because we just have 1 electron left, we have just 1 electron here in the valence shell or outermost shell. And let's do the same thing here for our chlorine. So we can see here that chlorine's atomic number is 17, so 17 protons, 17 neutrons. And then let's fill in our electron shells. Remember to draw them first unpaired and go back and pair. And when you get your chlorine drawing complete, notice that you have unpaired electrons in the valence shell. So when we have unpaired valence electrons or an incomplete valence shell, then we have reactive atoms. And reactive atoms are going to do some kind of chemical bond in order to complete that outermost shell. What happens in an ionic bond is one atom will lose an electron and the other atom will gain an electron. So that electron that used to belong to sodium now belongs to chlorine. And then your sodium is now called a cation. Notice that it has more positive protons compared to the number of electrons. There are 11 positive protons and just 10 negative electrons. So we're going to assign a positive charge to sodium. And over here, when we look at chlorine, we are seeing an anion. It has gained an electron. So in this case, this atom has 17 positive protons and 18 negative electrons. So because it has more electrons compared to the number of protons, it is called an anion and it has a negative charge. If we go back up here to our descriptions of cations and anions, we can add here that your anion will typically be assigned an IDE ending. So when we go back and we look at this compound here, we can write sodium chloride like this. So ionic bonds, you're always going to see the charges. These are fully charged atoms. We write the the cation first, and then the anion second, and we give it an IDE ending. So chlorine becomes called chloride. Now, what is it that's actually holding the sodium and the chloride together? That is actually just this attraction between charges. So we see that opposite charges attract in chemistry. And here's a funny little comic to help us remember. It says, perhaps one of you gentlemen would mind telling me just what it is outside the window that you all find so attractive, right? And notice that you've got cations in the classroom and anions outside. That's it for Ionic Bonds. Stay tuned for Covalent. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other.